Have you ever noticed that we give teenagers a lot of grace when it comes to their hormones, but very little grace to women in menopause? Think about that. I'm Denise Stiegel. I'm the menopause mentor. And this is something that I wrote about earlier this week. Essentially, the article's called What My 23-Year-Old Niece Reminded Me About Hormones, or more aptly put, reminded me how puberty and being a young woman and a woman in menopause have in common. So think about this. A teenager, now Kate's 23, she's not a teenager anymore, still. She's still pretty young. Um, a teenager typically emotional, anxious, struggles with acne maybe, mood swings, sleeping at odd hours, and questioning everything about her future, right? Most people just kind of go, yeah, she's a teenager. It's just hormones. She's just a young adult. It's just hormones. Um, but then when that same woman is in her 40s or 50s and experiences disruptive sleep patterns, anxiety, mood changes, weight gain, a little bit of brain fog, or some irritability, suddenly everyone's like surprised, like, whoa, where'd that come from? Right. So recently I was traveling with my niece, and she had honestly reminded me of something that I had completely missed or forgotten. Hormones didn't suddenly become important in midlife, right? They've been influencing our lives all along since the day we went into puberty. So, my niece had just completed an intensive 5-year master's program. And like every ambitious young woman, she spent years studying, working, worrying, questioning herself, pushing through enormous stress. When she graduated successfully, magna cum laude, to be exact. And she should have felt relieved. But as we traveled together, I noticed that she was still carrying some of the effects of that stress. She was struggling a bit with some acne that she had never had before. Her sleep wasn't great, and she was anxious about what came next. She was excited, but that uncertainty was still weighing on her. And as I watched her, I realized that her hormones were just as active as mine are at 23 and at 55. The difference is that she's in one hormonal transition, right, as a 23-year-old woman. Um, and I'm in a completely different hormonal transition, right? So, one of the biggest misconceptions women have is that our hormones only affect us in fertility and reproduction. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? But the reality is, our hormones influence nearly every system in our body. They affect our energy, our mood, our sleep, our focus. When you're young and when you're 55, yeah, it can affect your focus, your resilience to stress, your metabolism, inflammation, which we know gets more of a challenge as we get older, and then recovery, right? From exercise, from travel, whatever that may be, right? These are just chemical messengers, right? They travel through our bloodstream and tell our cells what to do, right? Every single organ system listens. Your brain listens. Your muscles listen. Your digestive system, your immune system, your cardiovascular system, they all listen, right? Hormones are not just part of our reproductive system. They're actually our body's communication system, right? We always think of it just as is our brain and brain synapses. Very often we talk about the gut brain connection. And yes, those are important, but guess what? All of those rely on hormones. So, researchers often describe puberty and menopause as the two major hormonal transition in a woman's life. I guess that period in the middle where you may be having children, that doesn't count according to these researchers. But of course, we know it does, right? In many ways than one that I won't get into today. What happens during puberty, right? Your estrogen rises dramatically, your progesterone starts cycling, your brain is adapting, your nervous system is adapting, is the rest of your body, right? And that's what symptoms show up. right? And some girls experience acne, mood swings, anxiety, sleep changes, headaches, painful periods all around their cycle, right? Now, think about menopause. Estrogen becomes unpredictable. That's a nice word. Our progesterone is declining. Our brain is adapting. Our nervous system is adapting. The body adapts. Same thing. Yes. Um, but now the symptoms show up a little bit differently. They show up as hot flashes and night sweats, which really suck. Sleep disruption, anxiety, brain fog, weight gain, mood changes. Different hormones, actually same hormones, different situation, different stage of life, right? Very similar biological process. Hormones are just changing. They're doing what they do, right, naturally, um, throughout our life, right? We're just in two different, very different times. We're in a different time at menopause than we are in during puberty. And into, and I don't just mean puberty when you were 13, but like really that entire teenage into early womanhood. Um, I think one thing that we understand much, much better today than we did 30 years ago is 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, just a few years ago, is the role of cortisol, the role that cortisol plays, right? Cortisol is our primary stress hormone. And when you're under a lot of pressure, your cortisol obviously rises. Pressure, stress, cortisol rises. And that's normal. Right? The problem occurs when that stress becomes chronic, when that level never comes down. And so we have the research that shows that elevated cortisol can contribute to, get this, everyone, me, sleep disruption, increased belly fat. Yes, hello, menopause, right? Anxiety, fatigue, but also blood sugar dysregulation. And this is something we don't talk about very often until it's a problem, right? But all of these things sound familiar. So my niece was experiencing many of these because of academic stress, right? And what's the next step? How's my life gonna, and she's just beginning and she's already like, how do I get to that next step? Many of us in menopause experience similar symptoms because of declining estrogen and changes in how our body now responds to cortisol, right? The symptoms look a little different, but the underlying biology is unsurprisingly familiar. And so why sleep changes matter in all of this, right? One of the common symptoms in both young women under stress and women in menopause is disrupted sleep, right? Why? Because our hormones help regulate our sleep wake cycle. Think of our circadian rhythm. That gets messed up with, once our progesterone and our estrogen starts doing all sorts of weird things. Progesterone has a calming effect on our brain. Estrogen helps regulate body temperature and supports neurotransmitters that involve sleep. So we have at menopause, we have less progesterone, we have calming the brain, we have less estrogen to regulate our body temperature, which is why we get hot flashes. Now, cortisol should actually be low at night and rise naturally in the morning. That's kind of what helps to wake you. So having cortisol is essential in our to life, basically. I think otherwise we'd be asleep all the time. But it does rise naturally during the day, and then as the day goes on, it goes down. Right, that's when melatonin comes in, and that's when the sleep cycle is to take over. Right, but when the hormones are disrupted, and we talk about hormone balance. I don't think our hormones have ever been balanced. Right, they work together. They work in harmony. Right, so when these hormones are disrupted, our sleep suffers. Right, and bad sleep, poor sleep, disrupted sleep, however you think of it, it really has a domino effect, right? It increases our hunger hormones. Great. It reduces our sensitivity to insulin, which I kind of mentioned a little bit ago, but not really. It affects our mood. It impacts our memory and concentration. Hello, brain fog. Sleep just isn't just a symptom, right? It's part of the underlying mechanism of what our hormones do. So here's what I want you to understand. Symptoms are not character flaws. I don't know how many times women have said to me, well, I just don't have them. I'm not in the best mood anymore. And I know it's me, and it's not. It is what's going on in your body, right? Symptoms are not a character flaw, they're information, right? Your acne, if you have acne, that's not your fault. It's not a failure because you have some anxiety that you never had before. That's not weakness, right? You're tired. That's not laziness, right? Waking isn't proof that you've lost discipline, that you're eating too much, right? Symptoms are often your body's way of communicating that something is changing, right? The question isn't what's wrong with me. A better question to ask yourself, what is my body trying to tell me? Think about that. So, in wrapping up here, as I watched my niece navigate this uncertainty of being 23 and graduating and getting her first job, yay, she did actually get her first job. Um, but I saw a younger version of myself, and I realized something. Women spend so much time fighting their hormones, right? The hormones are not the enemy, they are messengers. So whether you're 13, 23, 43, or 53, or 55, your hormones are helping to tell the story of what's happening inside your body. Right? And the more we understand that story, the better choices we can make. Perhaps the biggest lesson I think of in all of this is menopause isn't the first time your hormones have influenced your life. It's simply the latest chapter. So, if you've been wondering whether your symptoms could be connected to hormonal changes, I invite you to take the Menopause Hormone Clarity Tool. It is a self assessment that's designed to help you connect the dots between your symptoms, your hormones, and the changes that are happening inside your body so you can move forward with a greater confidence, more clarity, because understanding your hormones isn't about fixing yourself, it's about understanding yourself. I'm Denise Stiegel. I am the menopause mentor. I'll see you again next time.